Hi, and welcome to my first tutorial video. The goal for today is to try out W, a tiny library with a tiny name. We'll be starting with absolutely nothing, exploring this framework and ending up with something like this, a 3D scene rendered entirely in the browser. What is W, and why does it have such a tiny name? To start, let's take a look at the website for the W framework. You can see here, a very brief description, a micro WebGL2 framework. It has a number of features, built-in 3D models, custom 3D models, easy coloring, texturing, transparency, easy animation, groups of objects, flat or smooth shading, custom transformations, controllable camera, controllable light, indexed or unindexed models, automatic or custom normals, and less than 3 kilobytes. And this is sort of a key thing to notice. The reason why it's less than 3 kilobytes is that this framework is really built for code golf situations. So things where you're trying to build some sort of game or application in the tiniest number of bytes possible. And you'll see down here, this has been created by a person who goes by the name Zem. His real name is Maxime, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. You should really check out his website. He's got an amazing number of projects here, games, a whole bunch of games, and check out the JS Code Golf. You'll see some really amazing stuff that he's done in just a tiny amount of code. He's really big on compressing down the code to be teeny tiny, and yet it's just amazing stuff. So I really urge everyone to go check out his website. So if you just search for Zem, X-E-M, at GitHub, you'll find it. But back to the W framework, you'll see you can just pop it in a page with a script. And it's got a pretty simple API. We've got a reset, a clear color, a camera, a light, all the basic stuff you need to put together a real simple 3D world. But really, let's take a look at the examples. You'll see what it can do. So here's the basic XYZ axis. You can move the light around. You can change the field of view for the camera. Rotate. And you'll see everything here is being rendered with the W framework. Here it's showing off some of the built-in 3D models. So you can see they're being rendered here and they're being spun around. You can put in textures, colors. You can mix the two together. A lot of great stuff, all in this tiny amount of code. There's other stuff too. You can even use 3D models. He's got a nice one here of Mario. You can do transformations to him. You can do some changes to the projection and a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, you can see here's basically a little teeny tiny game almost written in the W framework. Real simple stuff. Our goal is really to just get started with this and probably have something that looks a little bit closer to what we see here. So I'm going to start by creating a directory on my machine. For now, I'm calling it W Dungeon because I intend to kind of turn this into a dungeon crawler a little later. But really, you just need a spot to put your code. And I have this opened up here in VS Code, one of the best editors out there. So as you can see, there's really nothing here. We've got an empty directory. So we're going to start by pulling up the command prompt. And first thing we're going to do is npm init. Basically hit enter through most of these. The actual content of the package is not super important right now, just the fact that we have one. So let's actually start by just creating a simple index HTML page. Right, it starts out blank. I'm just gonna type in some boilerplate. So now that we have a web page, we want to be able to just kind of open it up and refresh it easily. My go-to for that is a small library called HTTP server. And just so I'm always using the same script to start this up, I like to make myself a serve. You don't have to do this, but I find it helps to keep me doing things the same way regardless of what kind of server I'm using. So we'll just start up the server with npm run serve, runs that script. And you'll see we are going to open up this page on the localhost. And there we go. We've got our hello world. So the server's working, the page is working, and we've got what we need to keep continuing on. So next we want to get the W code into our project. So unfortunately, the W framework doesn't have anything on npm. You'll see here they don't have package JSON in here even. So what we'll do is we'll just copy it over. So we'll start with, there's a number of different files in here. We have the minified one and a light version, but we want the w.js because that is the one that is documented. And if we want to take a look through this later, we're going to want to have all the comments in there. So what we can do is just copy that, go back to our project, and we're going to make a new file for w.js and paste it all in there. And now we have it. We're going to go back to our hello world, and we're going to pop a script up here. And now we will refresh our project, and we see we've got hello W. Now we will open up the developer tools by just hitting F12, go to the console, and we should see a W. Just a big old W. So here you can see we've pulled it in. It's on the Windows scope at the moment. Something we might try to change, but we've got everything we need here. So next up, I'm going to add a new script for the project that we're actually going to be working on. I'm going to call it W World, and I'm going to make this type module. It means we're going to be pulling in an ESM module, and what we'll actually do is we'll try to convert over the W to an ESM module also. So we'll make this. So just looking briefly through the W framework here, you see this is really written in a very particular style that is used for code golfing. You won't see any var or lets or const. They'll just be left off just because it saves bytes. So anything that saves bytes but is still valid, they'll often leave off. But it won't matter too much because when we turn this into a module, this is all kind of self-contained. So hopefully we won't be polluting too much. Well, actually, now that I look at it, I think some of it might be polluting. So we'll take a look at it and fix it if we can. So we've got our W thing. Everything is basically inside of this W object. So what we'll just do is at the bottom is export that. Now we have to go back to our HTML file, and we're going to change this to, oh, actually, forget that. We don't even need this anymore. So what the browser will do is it'll import things automatically. So let's give this a check and see what happens. What happens is it should run this, and we should see some things in the console. Okay, so we see right away debug is not defined. The code breaks inside of the W file. It doesn't even get to our W world. And that's definitely a scope issue. So let's go back to file here, and we'll take a look at debug, and you'll see debug is used in a number of places, but it's not actually set anywhere. It's really just a constant. So should be fine if we change that to a const. And a W, I believe, is never set or reset anywhere else, so we'll change that to a const. And let's see if that fixes our problem. And there we go. We've got our hello W, and we're spitting out the W object, so things are working. We have now converted w.js into ESM format. If we want to be real precise to avoid confusing people, we could change this. And I think this might be a good idea, is to just change this to .esm.js, just in case someone down the road is looking at the two files and is confused why they work a little bit different. So the next thing to do is to set up a canvas. So great, we've got our page. I'm just naming it canvas because I don't need to be creative here. And let's check the documentation. I don't remember how this all works. So just so everyone knows, this is completely new to me as I work through this. I thought that would be useful for people to watch. So we're going to just take a look here. Here we go. So reset canvas element. Yeah, we can just start with these two for now. So in the world, so let's do something in here so that we know whether it's working. We're going to make the clear color red. Right away, we should be able to test that and see whether things are working. Oh, we've got a T is not defined. Ooh, so it looks like we're going to have another issue with the scope. Let's take a look. So sadly, looking for a variable named T is a little bit complicated, but it looks like the T is a shader. And I think that might give it the right scope. I'm afraid we're going to run into more problems like this, but we'll deal with it as they come. And there we go. We've got a red canvas showing up. Great news. Vertex shader, okay. Fragment shader, okay. Program, okay. So we are in business.
All systems are go.
Next, I'm just going to play around a little bit with the styling, just so we have something a little bit prettier to look at. For now, I think it's fine to put all the styles right here. I'm just making the canvas kind of full window size. I suspect that might cause some problems, but we'll deal with that afterwards. And the brightness of that window bothers me, so there we go. We've got the canvas, the full size, big old bright red. That's going to be also kind of painful, so let's kick that down to some kind of gray or something. So next, let's just set up the camera and the lighting. just following along here. So position-wise, we have some options of how we want this to look. For most 3D scenes, you're going to have the X and the Z be kind of your plane. Like if you're thinking about it as like a world, your ground is going to be your X and your Z axis. The Y axis is going to be up, typically. So I think for our camera, we're gonna have our camera kind of over on up on the Z axis. So we're gonna go for something like this. Move the camera up on the Z. You'll see here we actually, hey, look at this. This is nice. We're just gonna copy from here. Light, ambient. This stuff all looks good. We don't want any rotation. So if we go back, we won't see any difference. There's nothing to look at, so the lighting makes no difference. There's no background, there's no objects, but that's normal. So next step is let's get an object in there. Here you see, in this example, they're using a group, and I think that's probably not a bad idea, but maybe we don't need that yet. We'll start with the simple cube. So the cube's got coordinates of where it is, and then a size, rotation. I'm not able to copy that. So you see I'm starting to set up the parameters for the cube. And one thing you'll notice is that with these code golfing libraries is that sometimes the parameters are a bit abbreviated. So you have things like a B, and it's not entirely clear what a B should be. So the B is actually the background. And it looks like that is a color. So we're just gonna give it some kind of bluish color. And in the example they had a opacity at the end, but I'm not sure if that's actually needed. But I think that should do it for the cube. It's a bit smaller. You want to make sure that it's smaller than your camera is, because I'm not sure what will happen if your camera is actually inside the cube. You can experiment with that if you'd like. But the cube should be at 0, 0, 0, and the camera should be back away from it. So let's give that a try. And we see nothing. Oh, but there's an error. So we've got an AB is not defined. So something in the smoothing is causing a problem. I wonder if we can just turn off smoothing for right now. S, enable smooth shading. We're just gonna do that false, and we can come back and fix that problem if we want. Nope, still giving a problem. So AB is not defined. So one thing we see in here in this function set state, it looks like there's a number of variables. If you can tell, the color's a bit dimmer. So these variables are not being used in set state, which is very interesting. I'm going to just try making the A, B, and BC both constants here and see if that solves the problem. And it does. And there we have our quote-unquote cube. So as expected, the stretching of the canvas with CSS is causing a little problem here. I'm going to turn that off just for a moment so we can see what it really looks like. And there we go. So here's our view looking down at this cube. cube has no rotation, so really it doesn't look like too much. Let's give it a little bit of a rotation. I assume this is in radians, so there we have just a very tiny bit of a rotation. Let's add a rotation on another axis also. Oh, I think that spun it enough where we don't even notice. I would expect that rotation should work. So I'm curious if we broke if there's something else broken in the module version of W. So I'm going to go back to my Revit file again. I'm going to try. I'm going to try and just the original thing before putting it into the module. Maybe there's some sort of strange thing happening here. So we're going to go back here. That should help out. And then up here. This way goes over. Well, it seems to be working exactly the same. So that is good, I suppose. I guess we've got to look again at these rotations and see what's happening there. So back to here, let's check out some of these examples of the rotation. Let's see if we can do it. Will one of these let us rotate? Here we go. Yeah, so it looks like, based on this, that they are using degrees, which is fine. Degrees are fine. And there we go. That looks more like a cube in 3 dimensions, for sure. Now I want to take a look to see how the window is being set. I suppose I can probably just change it right in the HTML, and that should probably make a big difference. So I'm going to just make sure that this has a width on it of, oh, I don't know, 800. And then this should stretch it, hopefully, as long as we keep these two proportions the same, height and width, then it should look okay and not stretched. So it should still look like a cube when we go back. Yeah, there we go. Stretched out to the page. You know, we can make it bigger if we want. We can make this a proper square. Should be fine. There we go. Things do look somewhat off. It doesn't seem like it's centered quite properly. So next I'm going to try doing a group. I want to have a couple cubes in here. So it looks like the group, we just give it a name, and then we give that same group name to the things we have. So W group, N. So I've added in a floor, and I've put both the cubes into the group. There's now a blue cube and a green cube. So let's give that a try. There we go, 2 cubes. Looks pretty good. Although I would expect their rotation to look a little bit more similar. I think it must have something to do with the perspective, but hey, that looks 3-dimensional to me. Now let's try doing some rotation. So now I've added a couple more objects. I'm just going to start with them all kind of on top of each other, and they'll all be the same color. Because they're all using the same settings except for my second cube. but we'll just give that a try and see what it looks like. Just want to make sure that they're all showing up. Well, you know, I can't tell. Can't tell if they're all there or not. Surely my cube should be showing up, right? My second cube. Oh, that's strange. Huh. That is very unusual. Seems like by putting a new cube in here, it's killing the old one. I wonder if I just give it a different name. Yeah, that seemed to do it. It may also be because it must be mutating the settings that go in here and then using them again for this one. Let's check out and see what's happening. So we're going to look for cube. Takes the settings and passes it on to set state. But yes, so see, it is mutating the object. Okay, that's good to know. I'm going to go back to using the ESM version. And now this should solve it. So now there'll actually be separate objects going in there. Let's see if that fixes the problem. Yeah, well, I'm seeing two. Let's take out the name. Should be giving an auto name. And there we go. Okay, so one important thing to note is the object that you send into one of these objects is going to get mutated. So you want to pass in essentially a copy of it. I'm using the spread operator here. But yeah, that's good. That's very important to know. So I should be able to do this for these other ones. There, you can kind of see, I think that's probably the billboard that's poking out a little bit. But if we give them some different coordinates, we should start to see the difference. So we'll make this one a little this way, the billboard off to the side, pyramid down below, and the sphere zoom the camera out a little bit. Should give us a little bit of a better view. There we go. There's all of our objects. So I think that's all we're going to do with this particular project. We've got things displaying. It's obviously three-dimensional, but I don't want to take this too far because the site here has nice demos showing you essentially the same thing. I just kind of wanted to show how you might do it in your own file and get it working and running. But I do have ideas for how to expand this into a dungeon format. I kind of have a longer term goal of getting a little tiny old school looking dungeon showing up. And that's probably what I'm going to work on next, and I'll probably make a video about it. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this project. I will be posting this or the derivative project onto GitHub, and the link will be in the description. Thanks, guys.